Hello, fiendlings. How the hell are ya? I've been quiet for a while because life has been, well, interesting for the past several months. In case you didn't know, we had a hurricane come through here a couple of days ago, and while it didn't destroy my house, it definitely damaged the roof and we lost power for 2 days. As a result, we had to throw away all the food in the fridge and the freezer. I don't even want to know how much money I tossed in the trash, but there's no help for it. The good news is that the Black Evolutions release is imminent. Next week should see the trade paperback and the ebook go on sale, and I'll have a little YouTube trailer for you then too. I don't know when I'll be selling signed copies of the trade paperback, but I imagine that will happen in August. So if you've wanted to get one of my books signed and in your hot little hands, be looking for that announcement. The Black Oceania is currently in the hands of my beta readers, and assuming they don't find anything egregious, I imagine it'll be ready for pro edits followed by some conversations with my cover artist, Scott Pond. I'd like to get the book out by the end of the year, but we'll see. The last news item I have concerns the final book in the Black series, Extinction. I'm currently in the rewriting/editing stages and finding quite a few missing scenes. The book is already over 130,000 words, larger than Derelict Trident, and is heading for 150K. No telling how long it will end up being, but I'll have fun finding out. With that, I'm going to let you get to your content. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 16 of The Black, Outbreak.
Chapter 32. The SWAT team had left. The lieutenant was leading her team upstairs to try and get rid of whatever that thing was. Things, Harold reminded herself. Before Sarah left, she'd done 2 things. First, she talked to the disembodied voice on the radio, someone named Moore, and demanded she lift the radio blackout between the CDC personnel in the building and their compatriot trapped in the mobile command center. The other, she filled in Harold and Mathis about what was going on. Bottom line, none of it was good. "Ellis, you there?" Harold said into her radio. Pause. "Goddamn, you're alive?" She smiled in spite of herself. "Yes, Mathis and I are both here." "Fantastic. Look, there's someone named Moore who's got me locked in here. I've been—" "Paul," Harold broke in, "I need you to focus. I know it's been a tough night, for all of us, but we have to put that aside. You still have the sample?" "Yes," Ellis said. "I've got it." She and Mathis exchanged a glance. "What tests have you run?" She could hear Ellis taking a deep breath. When he finally spoke, it came out in a rush. "I've x-rayed the liquid, exposed it to the standard reagents, and it's reacted to nothing." "Hasn't reacted at all?" Mathis asked. Pause. "Well, not in the way I expected. It grew." "Grew?" Harold frowned. "What do you mean?" "Look, I saw what this shit did to the rest of the team in the ER. I've been very careful with it, but I did take a chance. I put it in a glass petri dish with agar." "And what happened?" Pause. "Just a drop of this shit quickly consumed all the biomedium and then grew to fill the petri dish." "Is it contained?" Harold asked. "Yes, for now. I put that sample in the fridge, in a metal box." She nodded to herself. "Okay, so what other tests can we run?" "Not much," Ellis said. "I mean, I can keep feeding this thing, but we already know what's going to happen. It's obviously not affected by the presence, or lack of, oxygen or water. I just don't have a proper laboratory to do much more. Except that—" She traded a stare with Mathis. "Except what, Ellis?" "Well, this is going to sound crazy," he said, "but I think it reacted to the light." "What kind of reaction?" Mathis asked. "Not sure how to describe it. And maybe it wasn't a reaction at all." "Ellis," Mathis said, "just get to it." Okay. He took a deep breath. "When I was preparing to run the samples, I turned around and the damn thing was bubbling." "Bubbling?" Mathis asked. "Bubbling how?" "Like from carbonation, little bubbles popping at the surface." "So what does—" "Shut up and listen, Mathis," Elvis said. "When I moved it away from the light, the bubbling slowed and eventually stopped. But every time I bring it near a strong source of light, it does that." What Ellis was saying made some sort of sense. Viruses and bacteria were deathly susceptible to strong UV light sources, which is why the CDC used UV to sterilize instruments and glassware in certain cases. Was it possible the infection was too? Ellis, what kind of light were you using? Just the strong LED lights we have in the command center. Why? She grinned at Mathis. What if we try something stronger? Mathis furrowed his brow, and then the wrinkles cleared from his forehead. A look of surprise fell across his face, quickly replaced by a mischievous smile. Ellis, he said, I think you need to get one of our sanitizing lights out, and try it on a small sample. UV, huh? Ellis paused. Shit, I know where you're going with this. How small of a sample? As small as you can get away with, Harold said. If it reacts to the LEDs like that, it might do something, well, violent if it comes in contact with strong light, especially in the UV range. Okay, Ellis said. I'll give it a try. And Ellis? Mathis said. Yeah? Try not to fry your balls off. Try not to fry your balls off, Ellis growled. Yeah, right. He turned and looked at the remaining liquid in the test tube. He had maybe 10 milliliters left, more than enough to perform a simple UV test. And Mathis was right. Using the smallest amount possible was the right idea. When he'd put a drop of the black liquid into an emulsion, it hadn't left the water. Either it hadn't wanted to, or it couldn't. Or maybe there was another reason it remained on the slide and didn't attempt to slide off it. Or maybe, just maybe, a single drop wasn't large enough to be a threat. Krieger was infected by a single drop of that shit, he reminded himself, and she gave birth to a goddamned monster. He shivered and looked back at the test tube. After the conversation with Harold and Mathis, he'd kept it in the shadows and capped with a metal top. Taking out the stopper and getting a single drop was just as dangerous as feeding it a petri dish filled with auger. What was it he had thought when Moore commanded him to start testing? God hates a coward? Well, he said to the empty command center, let's hope God doesn't hate idiots. Ellis walked to the supply cabinet and pulled out a portable UV light. The light was battery-powered, but large enough for CDC personnel to easily use it with their gloved hands. Decontaminating infected areas was difficult. Alcohol and traditional cleaning agents didn't always do the job, which was why, when possible, illuminating a contaminated area with UV light was part of the protocol. Finding a strain of bacteria or virus that could survive intense exposure to UV light was rare. Ellis couldn't even think of one that fit the bill. He placed the UV light next to the dropper, a clean slide, and the sample tube. He picked up the dropper from the metal basin he'd stored it in and examined it beneath the fluorescent lights. If the black liquid was made of cells, something he was very much beginning to doubt, the glass stem was no doubt contaminated with microscopic remains. Not that it mattered. As far as Ellis was concerned, the black liquid was the best cleaning agent invented by the universe. If it had been contaminated by anything, it had no doubt consumed it. Saying a silent prayer he'd be able to drink an entire bottle of whiskey when the quarantine was over, he reached for the dropper and the test tube. The moment his fingers curled around the glass tube, they began to shake. He pulled his hand back, closed his eyes, and focused. If he shook the shit, there was no telling what it was going to do, and if he dropped the test tube and it broke, he was screwed. Focus, he said to himself. He opened his eyes. His right hand was steady. Well, steady enough. Ellis reached out and gently lifted the test tube from the holder. Using his thumb, he removed the metal cap, the liquid in the tube immediately rising up the sides. Nearly dropping it, he closed the cap again with his thumb. The liquid threads reached the cap and slowly descended back into the glassware's bottom. Nearly shit myself, he thought. He took in a deep breath and then exhaled. He was going to have to be smarter about this. He put the test tube back in the holder and moved it out of the shadows and into the glare of the LED lamps. A bubble rose to the top of the liquid and popped, and then another and another. He waited until the surface came to a slow boil and flipped up the cap again. Nothing rose from the lighted liquid. He dipped in the dropper, gently squeezed the bulb, and watched as a small amount of the viscous liquid flowed into the stem. He quickly removed the dropper and shut the metal cap. Still holding the dropper, he moved the holder back into the shadows. The liquid stopped boiling at once. Wiping a sheen of sweat from his forehead, Ellis sat before a small metal bowl. He pressed the bulb, and the drop of black liquid fell from the glass and onto the metal surface. It didn't move. He made sure the dropper was empty and then placed it back in the sink. Refusing to break eye contact with the drop in the small basin, he fumbled for the UV light. Finally, his fingers found it. By touch, he faced it the right way and pointed it at the metal basin. He took in a deep breath, held it, exhaled, and hit the switch. UV blacklight spread out from the lamp, the rays of high-frequency light cutting through the air and striking the metal basin. The dot of black liquid disappeared in an explosive flash of light and a firecracker pop. Ellis jumped backward, nearly tipping his chair over. Scrambling to free himself, he nearly fell again, but managed to stand tall. Half panicked, Ellis scanned the floor for the dot of black. Had it really just exploded, or had it somehow leaped from its metal prison? No, he told himself. He looked at the metal container. A scorch mark darkened its center. It had happened. The liquid had exploded when exposed to the light source. Ellis's heart slowed in his chest. He had the answer. He looked back at the test tube holder. The remaining milliliters of liquid were still there, still imprisoned with no way out. And now Ellis knew how to kill it all. He just had to hope the team in the hospital could find something that would do the same thing without blowing the entire goddamn building to smithereens. Chapter 33. The rifle erupted in a gout of flame and sound. She was used to being in a combat zone, but the first shot fired was always the loudest. Even in the large room, it had sounded like a cannon. The thing in the darkness was no longer waving in the air. Whatever it had been, it was gone, and there was no way to tell if Epps' shot had been true. The members of Charlie and Delta all pointed their rifles down the hallway, their lights crisscrossing and cutting through the gloom. And then she saw it. The floor had crumbs of something black on the carpet. Maybe Epp had hit his mark after all. "Boss," Givens yelled from the other side of the room. She didn't bother looking over at him, her eyes riveted on the spot where the thing had been. "What is it, Alpha?" "I hear it. It's still back there." Sarah cocked her head and listened. Click, clickety-click, click, click. "Alpha, Scout. Charlie, Scout. Beta and Delta will provide cover. If you see that thing, do not approach it. Just call out where it is and get the hell away from it." "Boss!" the men behind her and the other teams said in unison. Epp and Schneck took up a stagger formation and proceeded forward. She looked at O'Malley. "Get ready," she said. He nodded, eyes narrowed. She tried not to smile. The rookie didn't look like he was going to break. Good, because they didn't have time to deal with that shit. She moved to the side, leaving O'Malley to hug the wall, and stayed a few meters behind Schneck and Epp and to their left. If they had to move backward in a hurry, she wasn't going to be in their way. More importantly, she'd be able to cover them without risking friendly fire. Heart-thumping, she took a step forward for every 2 steps Charlie took. The crackling and sizzling sound grew louder, and the smell of roasted, rotten meat stung her nostrils. Charlie was near the rear area where they'd seen it. A quick look told her Alpha was on the other side. If the hostel was in an area open to both sides of the room, both teams were going to have a shot at it. She prayed it had departed. And then Epp was firing his weapon. He saw the creature before she did. 3 tentacles lashed out into the hallway, and Epp leaped backward, finger on the trigger, rounds exploding from the barrel. Then Schneck joined in. Across the room, she heard Alpha opening up. Several rounds hit one of the tentacles near its tip, the sharp hook disappearing before another took its place. The other tentacles smacked into the floor and dragged across the tile with a sound like nails on a chalkboard. Alpha was emptying their mags with controlled bursts while Schneck and Epp held down the triggers until their mags ran dry. "Out!" Epp yelled. He stepped backward, and Sarah stepped forward. They crossed as she took his position, rifle aimed into the flashing gloom. Epp reloaded behind her. The tentacles came again. One of them slashed the wall right in front of Schneck. He might have squealed, but she couldn't tell. She was already firing. Her bullets flew true, snapping the tentacle in half, black particulates raining in the air before settling to the floor. Alpha's side of the room went quiet. Givens and Perkins were no doubt reloading while Beta took their position. But it didn't matter. The creature had had enough. Sarah held her fire long enough for Schneck to step back from the melee. He made it 5 steps before the black, squat thing moved from its hiding place and into the hall. One part of her brain told her to fire while another screamed at her to run. She did neither. For a moment, her body completely froze. The creature, blacker than the deepest darkness, waved 4 eye stalks from its base. The dead obsidian orbs at the tips seemed to stare at her. Its 3 legs clicked on the concrete as it shuffled forward faster than she thought possible. 4 tentacles raised in the air like scorpion tails. They reared back to punch forward. A hand grabbed her shoulder and pulled her backward. Rapid fire exploded beside her as O'Malley opened up. She watched the bullets hit the creature's body, black liquid drizzling out of the holes before hardening and plugging them. The rattle of 2 more weapons firing brought her back to herself. She shook away the arm on her shoulder, aimed, and pulled the trigger. Her rounds punched more holes in the creature's middle. It kept coming, closing the 5 meters at horrible speed. A tentacle punched forward. She sidestepped, and it slashed empty air. Just as she began to aim at it, the middle one moved toward her. The hooked end sliced at her body and took a chunk of cloth and Kevlar from her shoulder. She rolled to the side and hit the wall. O'Malley stood before it, the creature practically on top of him. He was yelling, screaming at the damned thing. His weapon clicked on empty. From her place on the floor, she watched him reach for a mag, and then his entire right arm lay next to her. The tentacle that amputated his arm rose above his head. Sarah tried to scream a warning, to tell O'Malley to get the fuck down, but the sharpened hook sliced downwards, bisecting his skull. O'Malley's helmet detonated in a shower of plastic shards, the broken glass rattle of his shattering skull, and a spray of blood. O'Malley's body fell to its knees and slumped to the floor. Another tentacle hooked into his back and dragged his corpse backward. The creature's body crackled and an irregularly shaped hole appeared. She stared into the infinite darkness for the briefest of moments, and then she was emptying the last of her mag into it. The bullets did nothing to keep it from lifting the body up and placing it into the hungry mouth. Smoke and steam rose as O'Malley's body dissolved into its makeshift gullet. A hand grabbed her shoulder and lifted her to her feet. "Fall back!" she shouted. Rifle fire continued, bullets raining down on the creature. Another tentacle snapped in half but regenerated before her eyes. The creature's body shuddered and crackled, and then it did what she feared most. It grew. The squat body elongated. A dark, moist-looking, bulbous end dropped to the floor. The concrete sizzled where the liquid end touched the blood and plastic from O'Malley's body. A pair of mandibles sprouted from either side of the dark hole. More legs crackled out of its base. 2 more tentacles rose from its great back. The creature scuttled from side to side as it stared at the retreating team. "Get out of the room! Fall back!" Sarah shouted again. The hand holding her disappeared from her shoulder. She turned and began to run, Schneck covering her and Epp. When they passed him, he turned and ran too. Upon reaching the door to the clinic area, the remaining 7 team members slipped into the hallway. Givens slammed the door shut behind them. Through the glass in the door, they could see the thing lumbering toward them. The glass exploded outward. A tentacle ripped through the door and waved in erratic patterns. The hook inverted and scratched across the door's metal surface. Sarah cleared her weapon and inserted a fresh magazine. "Schneck!" she yelled without turning around. "Get the guard! Get the civvies! Get them the hell down the stairs right fucking now!" Her radio crackled. "This is Moore. No one will be allowed to go down those stairs, Lieutenant." "Fuck off, Moore! We have to get them out of here!" "I'm sorry," the cold voice said, "but I can't risk it. They won't be allowed off this floor until that thing is destroyed." Sarah ground her teeth. "Schneck, get them to the back of the building, as far away from here as you can. If you find another place to hole up, get them there." "Boss!" he yelled through the radio. She walked backward until she stood next to Givens. "Got any ideas?" The Kentuckian wiped sweat from his cheek. "All we have is bullets, knives, and grenades," he drawled, "and the first two ain't gonna help." "Lieutenant," Harold's voice yelled through the headset. "A little busy right now, Doctor." "Just listen. It combusts in natural light. You have to find a source of natural light." "What the hell is she babbling about?" Perkins asked. "Shut it," Sarah said. "Doctor, where the hell am I going to find natural goddamned light?" "I don't know," Harold replied, "but you need to find halogens or UV lamps. There should be strong enough lights in an operating room." The metal door groaned as the creature pressed against it. The tentacle hanging out of the door's window smashed into the walls on either side. "The door's not going to hold," Givens said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Fall back," Sarah said. The 7 members continued walking backward, their weapons still pointed at the door. Grenades. They had grenades. Givens carried 1 flashbang and a regular explosive. The rest of the team only had flashbangs. The explosive would do a lot of damage, but unlikely to affect the team if they were far enough away when it went off. "Givens, the second that thing comes through the door, I want an HE grenade up its ass." "Boss," Givens said. He reached down and pulled a pineapple from his belt. His rifle fell on its sling, but stayed on his shoulder. He hooked 1 finger through the ring and waited. "Everyone else, get the hell back." The team continued moving down the hall. She turned for an instant and saw the security guard herding the rest of the hospital staff around the corner. If this didn't work, the damned creature would tear through her team, leaving the rest of the floor defenseless. "Like we're not already defenseless," she thought to herself. A terrible squeal echoed in the hallway. Metal shrieked as tentacles punched through the door's surface. Another tentacle squeezed through the window gap. The hooks sliced and smashed at both sides of the door, the metal twisting and bending. The lower hinge popped, sending a bolt flying past her head. Givens took a step forward and pulled the pin. He gripped the lever, waiting for the right moment. The door buckled again, and then bent in half, affording them the sight of its gyrating eye stalks and tentacles waiting to come through the door. The thing was even bigger than when she'd first seen it. It must have eaten more than just her rookie. Finally, the door gave out, the upper hinge snapping. The door flew several meters into the hallway and crashed into the floor. The creature attempted to squeeze its bulk through the doorframe, sheetrock and wood splintering as the thing pushed forward. The doorway buckled and exploded outward. Givens released his grip and the spoons dropped to the floor. He stared at the thing, his eyes boring into it. As it came forward, its mandibles clicking, Givens tossed the grenade at it, turned, and sprinted, his hands pulling his weapon back up to the ready state. The grenade hit the carpet and bounced just in front of the creature. Sarah yelled, "Fire in the hole!" and shielded her eyes. A split second later, the world was filled with smoke, a cloud of pulverized sheetrock, and bright light.